Record to the cloud. All right, part 2 is where we've established we're going to build a traveler app or a travel app of some sort called Globetrotter, which is cool. Or at least we're referring to it as Globetrotter. We don't really have a Globetrotter namespace yet on any of our server, or our, we haven't established that as our domain, but maybe we will eventually get this thing up on Heroku or something like that. So for now, we're working in the back end. Let's look at our dev log, see what we've done, have a quick tour, and we'll get started. Make a plan for today, and then we'll get started. So our dev log from last week, we talked about what we're going to build with an overview and our user stories. We thought about the models as well as their attributes and relationships. And as I mentioned, I went ahead and finished out at least a first draft of our database. So just for anyone who wasn't here, or for anyone watching, or a refresher, or whatever, our models are currently, anyway, user, location, attraction, comment, and trip. That's where, so I've got 5 models right now, and that obviously could change down the road. Let's have a quick snapshot of our schema, which will tell us a lot. It looks like attractions belong to location. That makes sense. They have a name and description. By the way, please shout out, first of all, if it's too small, if you can't read it. Also, if you see something that doesn't look right to you or seems different than what we just talked about, don't hesitate to ask questions, is what I'm saying, or make comments or contribute as much as you're willing and able for now and every study group you ever see me in, please. I've got comment here, which is a bit of a join because it belongs to a user and an attraction. Also has content. Location has a city, state, country, fairly simple. Trips have I kind of made this decision as I was building this. We have a start date and an end date, as well as belongs to a location and a user. We can add plenty more to this down the road if we want to. But for now, this gives us like a date range where we know when the trip happens, and of course, we can always build instance methods within our class around information that this gives us. I have these also as strings for now. We can also change the types if we like date time better or something along those lines. With user, I've got a name, username, password digest, and a hometown ID. So we belong to a hometown. We finished up our last session with a little bit of aliasing is what I call it, active record. I should say Ruby docs call it polymorphic association, where users are going to be related to location in more ways. So we chose to use some fancy smancy stuff there. If we have a quick look at our models, we can look and see those relationships that I just mentioned. Whoops, not application record, but rather attraction, comment, location, trip, and user. And we went ahead and added hash secure password because we know we want to store our passwords. So I have at least a little bit of a backend up and running. So I'm going to make some goals for today. The first thing I think we ought to do today before we do anything else. So let's see, this is, do I want to change the dates? I think I just want to add to this. So I'm going to make, and I can, we'll open up a markdown preview so we can kind of see what I'm writing as I write it. And in big letters, we're going to say today's date, which is, goodness gracious, the 31st of May. That's amazing. I think what I would like to do is first double check our models in a Rails console and add seed data. And I actually wrote that in the wrong order there. What I want to do first is add some seed data, and double check our models. This shouldn't take too long, but I definitely always want to do that before I go any further so I don't have any surprises down the road. Once we've done that, let's add a serializer or add serializers. And I think we're going to use, I've decided that we're going to use Fast JSON API, which is different. You may have seen active model serializers. We're going to use a little bit newer serializer that comes from the Netflix developer team called Fast JSON API, something like that. I might have the name not spelled right, but we'll install this, add serializers, I should say, that's enough. Add serializers around the models. Think about how we want to display. And of course, we can change that down the road as well, but I at least want to get an initial version up and running. So that's quite a bit on our back end. I'm going to add something here. We're going to mock a user login for now. And the reason for that is next week we're going to have, there will be two lectures on Tuesday. At least right now they're slated for next Tuesday. In the morning, we're going to do a React auth lecture, and in the afternoon we'll pick up this build series and we'll incorporate that auth that we learned in the morning in the afternoon into this application. So for today, we're just going to mock a user login. In other words, add a current user or something like that to our application controller, maybe something along those lines, and we'll just like grab the first user or something like that. So that's then from there, our next steps would be this comes kind of like, I don't know, maybe this is the exciting part. Maybe there's other exciting parts, but we're going to create a React app. A React, of course, using create React app. If all goes well there, the next step I think would be to establish, add redux, and establish our store, our initial store, at least like a first draft or initial version of our store. At least a first draft. Okay, and there's quite a bit kind of involved in these two steps, or quite a bit's kind of a meaningless phrase, I guess. We're going to create a React application, and we're going to start to set up our Redux store. Obviously, this involves adding at least one reducer, and it looks like we're probably going to want more than one reducer. And somewhere along here, as we do this, I think it's safe to run this. And as we start to set up Redux, this also means that we need to start thinking about, and really just like start thinking about drafting what our app is going to look like. So like, think about components. And if we get far enough, we can maybe at least add a couple components. I don't know if we'll get this far, but in today's session, in the next 90 minutes or 80 minutes at this point, but this is a pretty good chunk of stuff to get done in that amount of time. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, this is Babs.
Hey, Babs.
Hey, this may have been asked already in the previous session, but are you sharing or posting this code online so we could download it and dissect it ourselves?
Yep, and I don't know if I actually put a link to this in the first video that I posted, but I certainly will add this if I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't, so go ahead.
Okay, sorry. This is it. It's just globetrotter backend in my GitHub, which is Howard B. Dev. My middle name is Briggs, and my last name starts with DEV. So that's been my handle a long time, way before I ever thought about being a developer, by the way. So github.com, Howard B. Dev. Here we go. That's the back end. And of course, there will be a different repository for the front end, which it doesn't exist yet. Good question, Babs. Thank you for asking that. And I'm sorry I didn't put that in that first video. It slipped my mind, and I will add it to that video, and I'll make sure to post it in the description of all the upcoming videos as well. But that's it, and it is up to date. It should be anyway. Git push, nothing to push. It should say good. Git pull. Well, I just pushed, so I shouldn't have to pull. Okay, great. We're in good shape. So let's get started. So we have quite a bit on the plate here. I think first of all, any questions? Any questions? And like, you could ask like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing this order? Anything is on the table. No question is too small. No question is too silly. No question will demonstrate how little you know compared to how much everyone else knows. That doesn't exist. And even if it does, and if you're really timid and you have a question but you're afraid to ask it, that's okay. If you Zoom chat and you look at the chat, there's a little blue bubble where you can select to send a chat to everyone, or you can just send a chat to me privately. So if you click that drop down, you can click on my name and choose to send just me a message. If you do that, I'll be careful not to out you with your incredibly embarrassing question, but I'll be happy to answer it anyway. Just kidding, it's not embarrassing. But that's okay. I'm just telling you, please ask questions, and you have the opportunity to do so, even quietly if you want. That's fine. I'm just trying to encourage questions to be asked. All right. So, there's something else I wanted. Well, I can save that for later. What I was gonna say, I'll just tell you what just popped in my head. I also want to think about adding .env so we can have an environment variable to hold. Well, we can hold off on that. I don't need that yet. Never mind. So forget I just said that. We'll talk about that more with auth if we need it down the road. Let's see. So let's think about adding seeds. And what better place to add seeds than our seed file? Now, our seed file, I've already created, Nadia. If you were here last week, you remember this. I'm going to comment that out because when I run Rails DB seed, running Rails DB seed does nothing more than execute this file. So whatever I have in here will be executed. So just kind of for my own reference, I'm actually going to put this over here because it's easier to read, or I could just drop down my models. I know I've created a user. So, but I want to see those relationships too. So this is not as readable as I would like it to be, or at least not as compact. You know what I'll do? I'll do it this way instead. Let's open up user at the top. Let's do location, split down, attraction, split down, trip, split down, comment, split down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Am I missing one? Trip. Okay, and that allows me to see all my associations. I'm already second guessing. There is an extra Howard B. Dev. Thank you, whoever wrote that. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Nadia, for correcting that for me. It is not, you're right. I have an extra username in what I posted there. I don't know how I did that. I know exactly how I did that. I copied the remote part, including my name, but I also wrote it. Sorry about that. Yes. Just one Howard B. Dev in there, and that's it. Nadia has fixed it for us. Thank you, Nadia. I'm already second guessing my my trip because I also kind of want to see the schema. So let's see. I'm going to drop my schema down below here. I'm sorry. What I'm second guessing. I keep saying I'm second guessing something without saying what. I'm second guessing my the fact that I chose to use strings for my trips. I might want to just go ahead and change that to date time for my start date and end date. I don't know. What do we think? Any thoughts from the audience about that?
Yeah, go ahead, use the real stuff.
Date, yeah, date sounds like
date sounds better than string. Okay, so then let's add a migration. So I'm going to say Rails G migration, change date, change start and end date to date time. Okay. And let's see what this looks like. Who knows how to do that? Anyone? Any guesses?
Maybe update column.
Are you guessing?
I'm completely guessing.
Yeah, and the funny thing with Rails, it probably is like that or like change column type. I guarantee you it's probably one of these two. And I don't know it off the top of my head either. So I'm going to say active record, change column type. I'll say migration. And I bet you it's one of those things. Because these names are very intuitive.
change column. I have done the same thing. I had the same issue. It's change column.
It's just change column. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nadia. And I think Nadia and Sarah both said the same thing at the same time there. Change column. And I have no data, so really this should not affect anything terribly. This is for trips. And it's my start date. Start date. And that's going to now be date time. And end date. End date will now be date time. Now what I can do real quick to like watch this happen, if I say Rails C and I say trip.new, well, actually, no, this doesn't tell me the type here, does it? Never mind. Anyway, I'll just check my schema. So I've run that, and now let's run RailsDB migrate. Date. You're saying date rather than date time? Is that what you're saying, Sarah? Okay. We'll go Sarah's way. Okay, that seems to have worked. So now if I do something like check my schema, which is already open right there. And now my trips are dates. What's the difference between date and date time, by the way?
I'm guessing, but it's probably just the month, date, year, and not the timestamp.
I'm honestly, I think that's correct. I'm not even 100% positive myself. I'd have to play around with it to see, but I think that's right. I think it's literally the time versus, and I agree with that. We don't care about what time of day we're starting our trip, or at least I don't. Cool. And it might be something a little different from that, and so don't take what I just said as gospel, but I think that sounds right. Cool. So let's now create some more stuff. So right now we have one user in our database, and I think we have one location. So let's add some more stuff. I know I want to add basically kind of one of everything and test each of my relationships. So let's see. We'll just go right down from the top, attractions. So let's say, anybody have any thoughts? Like, help me out here. What do you got? What do you all represent your hometown if you want, or something you love? Like what attraction can I put where?
Let's go to Disneyland.
Disneyland. Okay, so Disney equals attraction dot. Now, should I create my attraction first, or should I create, like, what do I need? Like, what's the order of operations here when it comes to writing a seed file like this? Does it matter? Like, what does attraction rely on?
Location.
Yeah, so I think I should create my location first. Where is Disneyland? Disney World or Disneyland, by the way? Which one?
Disneyland's California.
So which one? I mean, which one are we making? You all tell me. You're the deciders here.
Let's go to Disneyland in Anaheim.
Okay, so Anaheim. Is that how you spell Anaheim? Create. This is city. Is this right? I don't know. Is it Anaheim with an EI like that? Or is it IE?
I think so. I can double check.
Okay, if someone would, that would be awesome. State is California. Should I do abbreviations or spell them out? What do you all think? I think I like postal abbreviations. What do we do for? Well, for London, it was London. We had to spell it out. I guess we'll just spell them out. Why not? And city, state, country. Everybody okay with USA? Is that cool?
Anaheim is spelled correctly.
Oh, amazing. That doesn't always happen, so I'll take that as a win. Okay, so I could do it this way. Disney equals attraction dot create. What else could I do, by the way, instead of doing it that way? Attractions belong to a location, right? Which I should add this as a has many, right? Has many attractions. Cool. So how could I build an attraction called Disneyland and automatically show it as a member of Anaheim's attractions?
Could you do Anaheim dot attractions dot add?
It's not dot add. There's two ways I could do it. I could use build, or if I just want a shortcut, I can actually just do create.
Create.
Yep. Awesome. Good. It looks like we need a name and a description. Name is going to be Disney. Is Disneyland 2 words, or is it all together? It's all together, isn't it? Like that?
One word.
Yeah, okay. Disneyland and description. Description.
Happiest place on earth.
Place on earth. How do you do like a little earth? Does earth need to be capitalized? I don't know. That definitely feels like I need like a little trademark sign or something, like TM or something. But we won't. So that looks good. So now I've created a new location, which I already had one. I'm going to add an associated attraction right off the bat. That's cool. What else should we add here? So I've added an attraction. I've added, before I add a comment, well, no, we could say that, let's say that Nadia has gone to Disneyland. So we'll say Nadia equals user.first, because I know she's the only one in there. Nadia, so first let's make her a trip, trips.create, and we'll send Nadia to, let's see, trip belongs to user and location. Let's see, so I guess this is interesting. So we have to think about trips in the context of locations. That's the way we have it set up now, rather than attractions, and that's okay, I think. I don't know, attraction belongs to a location. Maybe we need to set up a join as well between a trip and an attraction, because we know that a trip is going to a location. That makes sense. But maybe we visit an attraction while we're there and maybe we don't. So it almost feels like we need a separate join model just for a trip and an attraction. What do we think? Any thoughts on that?
I think that's the way to go.
Any sort of, does anyone think that's not a good idea? I think it is. I think that makes sense. So I'm going to say Rails G, and for now I'm just going to add a model, because I don't think we're ever going to need this thing to have its own. I don't know yet, but I don't know if it needs its own stuff. I could add resource, and so I should pause and comment on the generators that I use. I use scaffold generators for these, which is not a good idea for the reason that now I have a controller that's fully populated for all these, and I might not need all that. So what's important if you're going to use a generator that does too much is to go back and delete the things you don't need. So I really should actually put that like in big letters here somewhere in my devlog. I should say somewhere in here in rather large letters, I should remind myself that down the road, whoops, there it is. I should remind myself that I will need to delete unused files and actions from using a scaffold generator. So maybe I shouldn't have even used that at all, but I did. So I just need to remember to do that down the road. So I'm writing that down so I don't forget it later. Okay. So where were we? We're just going to just say resource, and this is just going to be trip. Well, what do we think? Trip attraction? Trip attraction? Attraction trip?
What's the convention for that? Sorry.
The convention is, so like, first we think like, does this thing make sense? So I'm going to go on a trip, and the trip belongs to a location. That makes sense, right? I'm going somewhere. But while I'm there, I'm going to see some things I'll see, some things I won't. If I go to Anaheim, maybe I'm going to go to Disneyland, but I'm not going to go watch the Mighty Ducks play. Are they still in Anaheim? Or the Angels, or whoever's still in Anaheim? I might be out of date on my sports. I don't know.
Mighty Ducks are still in Anaheim.
Okay, so maybe I'm going to go to a Mighty Ducks. Maybe I go to Disneyland, but I don't go see the Mighty Ducks. So how can I represent that I went to one and not the other? So on that trip, which the trip already knows that it's me and that's that location, and the location is aware of which of the attractions it has available to it by this association. But I don't have a great way right now of knowing like which of them did I actually go to. And so we need a join model to say on this trip, I went to this attraction, whatever that attraction is. So as far as convention goes, when it comes to building join models, is there some sort of real life thing, whether it's abstract or whether it's tangible, is there a real life thing that represents that relationship that we can talk about? So like, you know, when two teams meet for an exhibition play against each other, we call that a game, right? Or a match, depending on the sport. So there's a word for that in the English language. And so that's what we would call a join between two teams on a game, right? Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Well, on trip we have location, and then on attraction we have a location.
Mm-hmm.
to my mind, actually, on a trip, you go to many locations and you visit many attractions. And the attractions determine the location.
So a trip could have many locations rather than belong to a location?
Well, I would say a trip has many attractions, and obviously an attraction has many trips. So you'd have to join it through a visit table.
Right. So visit, right? So that's kind of maybe the answer to the question. Maybe we should make a class called visit, which represents on a trip, I visited an attraction. I actually kind of like that.
Date on the visit.
Pardon?
You put the date of the visit on the visit.
So visit could have a date, right? Certainly join models can carry information. Some carry only IDs, right? Others carry tons of other information. So I think I like what you're saying, Chris. It makes sense to me that maybe rather than a trip belonging to a location, that a trip would actually have many locations. What do we think about that? I mean, this can be really tricky, and sometimes you end up spending way too much time thinking about your relationships and your models to the point where like it bends your mind a little bit. And you're like, oh, this hurts, and you expected to be spending so much more time on the front end, but it happens. We have to think about these things. Any thoughts? Like, so what if let's think about that for a minute. What if a trip has many locations? And this feels like maybe like through a visit, wait a minute, locations or attractions? You said a trip would have any attractions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, you have a Europe trip. You go to many places. You don't go to one location. You go to several locations, and in those locations, you visit several attractions. So to simplify it all, you tag the location on the attraction and then the attraction into the trip, and you can get to everything you need, at least in theory.
Right. Yeah, let's see. So then a trip would have many attractions through visits, maybe? And then, it's getting tricky. Spending my mind. I don't think I think you have a point there, because if we go back to belongs to location, then we're implying that when we have a trip, like we can only go one place. So I think trip having either many locations makes sense, or having then many attractions as well. And
hi, this is Adil here. So I'm thinking about this, and if Nadia mentioned something that we're thinking about locations as destinations, and attractions and locations, they are kind of, they are kind of similar. Well, not really, I guess, but you could have a more umbrella term where you do have a trip that has many destinations. Each destination has a location, and that destination we could keep attractions and refer to that to as a destination, but destination is more all-encompassing, so to speak. So if we were to use the term attractions, a trip has many attractions. Each attraction belongs to a location. So by default, the trip also has many locations, and through attractions, I guess. Yeah.
Maybe the location should be the destination, or I'm sorry, the attraction should be the destination, because they're kind of the same thing.
well, we can, as far as I don't care whether we say attraction or destination. It feels like when we say attraction or we say destination, I feel like, because we started with kind of both of those, and that seems redundant. So I think we could pick one and stick to it. But if we stick to, if we have what we have on the screen right now, attraction belongs to location. That makes sense to me. On a trip, we go to many attractions, which means that we were in many places because each attraction belongs to that location, right? What do we think about this, where it is now? With this, we don't have to add actually another. What do we have to add? We have to say,
We do need the visits table, I think.
yeah, no, I think you're right. So this would actually, has many visits, and then attractions would be through visits, and attraction would belong to a location, and a visit would be a join between an attraction and a trip. I think that's it. Does this feel right? Does this feel like we have it maybe now?
There's a saying, it says good enough for government work. I think
So we need one more model to join. Then on a trip, we visit attractions, and that gives us our locations. And then I think that's enough.
You have a typo on your has many attractions to visits. You're missing an I in visits.
Thank you. All right. So then, do we want to change, by the way, do we like attractions or do we like destinations? And that's totally,
Maybe destinations.
I couldn't, doesn't matter to me whatsoever. So I'll take a poll if you want. How many people vote? If you want attraction, type it in the chat, or if you want destination, type it in the chat. Whichever the most wins in the next 10 seconds. Type quick. Who wants attraction? Who wants destination? Attraction wins. Okay. Especially because I didn't say this, but if you capitalize it, then that counts twice. So we're going to stick with attraction and just add a trip, and I think we're going to be there then. So instead of trip attraction, we'll say visit, and a visit joins a trip. Oops, and with trip ID, which is an integer, and an attraction. Okay. And let's first of all do what we need to do here. I just added resource, for that one.
Howard, did we put date on visit? Do we want to?
Yeah, we should. I didn't migrate yet, so I can do that right here. T.date, date. That looks good. Let's see. We were going to move, I just did that, right? I moved visits, which means I need to add name spacing, which is ABI v1, and then in my routes, so config routes, we need to bump visits down into our name spacing. And this, by the way, will probably change. Right now, I just have each resource represented with its RESTful routes namespace directly under API v1. It's entirely likely that either we won't need all of these or some of them will be nested under others. Right now, they're just all sitting there waiting to be changed. For now, I'm happy with like getting this thing set up, and then we'll think about rearranging the routes as it makes sense to do so. For now, I'm totally okay with just kind of knowing that they're all, each one has its own top level controller. And I mean by top level, I mean I don't have nested routes set up yet. Cool. So there's our visits, and visits controller doesn't have any routes yet. I'm okay with that. So visits has the trip ID. Where does it? Oh, I didn't open up visit yet. Let's put down. Okay, visit belongs to an attraction, belongs to a trip. Okay, so attraction. I don't think attraction really needs to, we could always pull in like has many visits and things like that. Right now, I don't need that information, so I'm not going to add it until I think I actually want to use it, which could happen down the road. Maybe I want to know like the most popular attraction, which attraction has been visited the most. And so that I could see that actually being something I would want in the future, but for now I'm going to leave it alone. The nice thing about has many is something that I don't have to use. I could add it later if I wanted to. So let's see, a trip has many visits. Okay, visit has a trip ID, good. Has many attractions through visits. Visit has an attraction ID, that should work. And then has many locations through attractions, and the attractions belong to locations, that should work. Oh boy. So I'm going to do it unless somebody sees something I didn't. No promises here that we got it all right. We're going to give it a shot. Fire off our visit migration. And let's just pause for a minute. Oh, this is way too big of a commit, folks. Don't do what I'm doing here. This is terrible. Don't ever do git add dot. But I'm just kind of hacking this stuff, getting it going. I shouldn't say hacking. I'm just building this quickly. Add visit. And update relationships. That's pretty much all I did there. Okay. All right. So now we can kind of come back and think about what in the world we're doing here. So Nadia, we've got Nadia. So now we're going to create. Nadia's going to have a trip. So a trip, and let's see. It's going to. We look at our trips. We have. Ooh, what do we have that we don't need anymore? Does a trip need a location? A trip no longer needs a location ID, does it? So this needs to be taken out of there. But that's okay. So we'll just say trip.create. Yeah, that's good enough. Trip.create, and this is going to be start date of, oh man, date. Somebody help me out here with syntax. Date.new. I think I can do something like this. 2019, we'll say June. We started today. What is today? Tomorrow. I think that'll work. We'll find out if it breaks. End date. Date.new. If somebody knows off the top of their head that this syntax will fail, just let me know. 6, we'll say that this is for a week. Okay. So we'll say this is Disney, Nadia Disney. Nadia Disney. So let's see. Nadia Disney. Now we need to add some visits, right? Or some attraction. We have an attraction, and we don't need any more locations. So Nadia Disney visits create. A visit needs a trip ID and an attraction ID. So Nadia Disney is the trip. Okay, so we just need an attraction ID or an attraction itself, which is Disney. Okay, and a date. Which will say.
Howard, I think you can just throw a string in there for the date, year, month, day, with dashes.
Like that, make life a little simpler.
I don't know. I find it easier, but.
Let's drop into. Let's see what kind of craziness happens here. Rails C, if I drop in with a sandbox, a dash X, a dash S, anything I do will be rolled back, which is a really nice feature. So if I say n equals user.first, v equals visit.new, so let's see, v.date equals, let's see, 2019-06-01. V.date. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's awesome. Let's just do that. And let's do this. That does make life a lot easier, doesn't it? Okay. Anybody see any issues with our seed file? We're creating a location. We're creating an attraction, an associated attraction. We're grabbing our first user. We're creating a trip associated to that user and a visit associated to that trip. So that's enough for me, I think. Did we catch everything other than comments? I guess we could add a comment. So Nadia.comments dot create with content of fun for all. I assume, Nadia, you liked Disneyland. Nadia.comments and attraction, also Disney. Okay, let's see what happens when we run rate db seed. Rails db seed. Cross your fingers. Any errors, we'll see what happens. I can't believe I don't have errors. I can't believe I wrote that without errors. Okay, cool. Undefined method trips for users. User, where's user? Oh, there it is. Oh, has many trips. Okay. What else did I forget to add for user? A lot, right? All I have right now is hometown. How did I forget about the most important models relationships? User, name, attribute, password, relationships, belongs to hometown, has many trips, has many attractions through trips. Okay. Is that still the case, right? It is, right? Which also means has many, and I could just say locations, right? Also through what, trips? Or no, through attractions, right? Now.
I think you need visits in there somehow.
A trip has many visits. So as long as I have many trips, then I have my visits. So this is, so has many through can represent a join model, or can represent a nested has many. So there's two ways we can use has many through. And this one would be grabbing a nested has many. User has many trips, trip has many visits, therefore user a user has many trips, a trip has many visits, therefore a user can have many, oh, wait a minute. Has many attractions, sorry. An attraction carries the location, right? I'm saying the wrong things, but what I'm saying is still true, I think. Has many trips, trip has many attractions, and has many locations, which means that I can grab both of them. Okay?
Yeah, I got you, I think.
As long as this is here, I don't need to mention visits and users, because these three has manys exist on trip, and therefore, as long as user has many trips, user has access to all of these.
I got you, but what's throwing me a little bit is that attraction is through trips and locations is through attractions.
Thank you, through trips, thank you. There we go. That's better, right?
I think so, yeah.
And actually, I think I could, I don't know. Let's let's see where we stand right now. So let's drop into, let's see, where were we here? We hit what line of code? Seeds, line 14. So we hit this line of code, and that's where we failed, right? Which means that these ran. So be careful when you run your seed file. If it fails on line 14, like it just did, these would have run. That means that those ran with success. So be careful then when you go to run again. So now we failed here, which means I should now be able to fire off these last three lines by running Rails DB seed again. I'll still be amazed if we don't have another error. Okay, Disney for main object, that's because I commented it out. So we need, Disney is the only attraction yet, right? Disney equals attraction first. Is there any other references here? Nope, okay, let's try that again. Okay, undefined method comments for user. Oh yeah, of course, the user has many comments. The one the one model I forgot to add things to is like the one we're going to be dealing with probably more than any, which is comments. Okay, great. So then everything up to here should have run as long as I still have Disney and I still have Nadia. So those two can disappear. And finally, as we slowly work our way through our seed file, hopefully that'll do it. Okay, so now let's check. What I want to do is check our console. And let's see, I'm going to grab Nadia is our first user. Let's see, does she have any comments? Ooh. Oh, Nadia, duh. Nadia.comments. I usually use single letters. All right, so comment, fun for all, user was attraction ID. Let's see what attraction number 1 is. Attraction.find number 1, okay. How about Nadia.attractions? Okay, there it is, Disneyland, this is good. How about A equals, or actually it's Disney. Disney equals attraction dot first. How about Disney dot, what do our attractions have? Just belongs to a location. Where is Disney? It's in Anaheim. That's good. Okay, so Anaheim equals location dot first. Let's see, Anaheim, what attractions do you have? None, that's not good. So a location has many attractions. Attraction belongs to a location.
Your first location's London, doesn't have anything.
Oh, thank you. So I did that wrong. So let's see, location, so no, Anaheim equals location dot second. Thank you for pointing that out. Now Anaheim attractions. There we go. There's Disneyland. That's good news. That scared me for a second. Thank you for noticing that, whoever that was. I'm sorry I didn't notice who it was. What else do we need to check? We see that Nadia was able to create comments. How about Disney's comments? So Disney.comments, right? Was that not an attraction? Has many comments? No. What are we commenting on? Oh, we just don't have it here. There we go. That's easy enough, and I think that should do it because the nice thing about adding has manys is like I just forgot to add the macro. Now it's there, and that should work. Although I can't test it in this session. I feel pretty good about this. Does anyone have any questions or feel like this is? Does everyone feel like this is working okay? I feel pretty good about it. Yeah. I don't know. Anybody see any issues or any glaring problems with anything that's going on here?
So if we do Nadia.visits, we should be able to see that, right?
Let's see. Rescue and IRB visits. Undefined method visits for users. I didn't add visits. I didn't add visits. I added attractions because an attraction is joined by a visit. I could add visits, right? So I could, if we want to just say this, somewhere this feels like I'm grabbing too much information. Has many visits, and this is what Chris was mentioning, I think, has many visits through trips also. So somehow I feel like I have too much here. Like at some point, instead of using active record, I could add class or I could add instance methods. I don't know, it feels like a lot. But now if I exit this, and I say Rails C, I'll just say n equals user.first, and I say n.visits. We do have a visit ID with a trip ID of 2.
Yeah, I missed that too. I didn't realize that we didn't put the visits in there.
And the question is like, do we ever want this? Sometimes like active record will allow us to expose more information than we need. And so the question is like, what do we need and when do we need it? I think we have a good setup here for now, at least to start. And we should pay attention though, are there any of these that we are like, wait, we don't use this at all, and we can get rid of it if that's the case. But all these things keep in mind, these are just generating methods for us that active record will use to build queries to our database, searching for things that are associated by their foreign keys. So it's not a tremendous amount of extra work to have these things available, but I also wouldn't I would encourage not having them if we don't use them. I feel pretty good about our backend setup. Let's move along to serialization. Does anyone, unless someone has any questions? Okay. So serialization, basically what's happening right now, whoops. And I'm just going to use the Rails server because I don't have any authentication or authorization going on right now. I'm not creating anything yet, so I don't really need Postman. I'm just going to run a Rails server, and I can just run it on 3000 for now because I don't have anything to conflict with that. So I'm going to go to localhost 3000. I always like to check my routes. Whoops, there it is. So, whoops, oh, I didn't want to do, okay. Rails tails, that's interesting. Rails info routes, so there are my routes. And I should have basically a full set of routes around each of my models for now, because that's the way I set it up. Along with a bunch of this other stuff for active storage, which we may use as well down the road for things like pictures or whatever. But for now, I've got all these routes. This feels okay, just at a glance. Feels like I have all my RESTful CRUD actions are available for now, at least. Doesn't mean the actions are there in the controller, depending on whether I used the scaffold or the model generator or the resource generator. Let's see. So let's go to localhost 3000 and check out users. Okay, that's because, of course, I have API v1 users. This is user number 1, that's Nadia. All my users, I only have one user. Tractions, okay, visits, right? These are all here right now, except that I didn't build all my routes in my controller. I already mentioned that, I knew that already. Attractions, locations. I also did not build anything for locations yet, that's okay. So I have a couple of my controllers, and the reason we're seeing this is some of them I use scaffold, some of them I use resource to use as far as the generators I used. So the scaffold ones are there, the resource ones are not. But that's okay, I'm cool with that for now. So let's think about serialization. Basically the point is, like, I don't necessarily want, like, the easiest thing to say is, like, there's no way I want this thing exposed. I don't want my password digest to be exposed, even though I'm using bcrypt, right? And someone would have to know the hash and the salt and which algorithm is being used in order to somehow twist this thing back into a string. That doesn't matter. I don't want this thing to show up here. So I might not need my created at and updated at. And not to mention, maybe it would be nice, maybe down the road, I'm going to want some associations. So I'm going to want to control very carefully what I send to my front end. And I'm going to use active model serializer, or not, I'm going to use that as FastJSON API for that. FastJSON API serializer. So I'm just going to follow the docs. If you're using a tool that you're not familiar with or you've never used before, go to the source, and if it's a decent tool, it should have decent docs. Maybe that's not 100% true, of course, but I happen to know this one's fairly decent. I've used this before, and it's much faster than like active model serializers, for example. It was committed, looks like the last commits were like a couple months ago, so it's fairly recent. And as you can see, it comes from the developers over at Netflix. So let's just read through this a little bit. Okay, it's a gem called FastJSON API, so that's easy enough. I'm going to add that to my gem file. Where is my gem file? There it is, gem file. And does it matter where I want? I'll just do this right here. So there it is, there's my gem. Once I have it, I'm gonna bundle install. That's pretty common. I would have expected that. Okay. And this should just take a second. So our next step would be to use a Rails generator. Okay, that looks cool. So let's do that let's just start with user. So Rails G serializer user. Rails G serializer user. Now it looks like I can already declare some of the things I want here with my serializer. So let's at least start with username, and what was the other, was it name? What else did we add to users? I don't even remember. Schema. What do users have? Name and username, okay. Oh, and hometown. So maybe hometown too. And I don't have to, I can always add these manually down the road, but let's just see what happens when I do this. And this should look really familiar if you've used AMS before. Then this is pretty much exactly the same so far anyway, that thing that AMS has done for you, or the way that you've used it looks very similar. So let's see now what was just generated. If we look in app, we now have a serializers folder and a user serializer, which includes FastJSON API object serializer, and here's our attributes, okay? Let's see how this has changed, or if like, is that it? Like, do I have to do anything else? And let's look. Let's see what happens now if we refresh our user. Site can't be reached because I killed my server. So once that's up and running again, I'll refresh this page, and something seems to have gone wrong. So let's look at the docs. Did anything go wrong, as a matter of fact? So here's our model definition, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. That looks normal, okay? Okay, so return a hash, return a JSON string, and serialize blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it looks like we actually have to manually choose how we want to return these things. So let's see, kind of, this is what we're looking for. And this is very common with a serializer, right? You could build your own custom serializers if you wanted to. But let's just see if we can get this to work. So I'm going to find my user controller in API v1 users controller, which I use as scaffold generator, so everything's here. So instead of rendering JSON users, which I'm just going to comment out for now, I'm going to say, I'm going to follow sort of grab this thing for reference. Excuse me, that's what it said. So basically I want to say my user JSON equals user serializer.new, pass in my users, and we'll see, users JSON. This is the index page. Serialized JSON. Actually, I'm going to move this to the show because that's where I am right now. So, and turn this back to what it was. So then this is the one I'm going to comment. So now I'm creating this string, or I'm creating this JSON serialized JSON version of this. Now this is just a user.
Howard, you want to change it back to user? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Please don't hesitate to point those things out, because those are things I forget all the time. So it looks like serialized JSON is a method that's available to a new instance of user serializer, right? Because this is just Ruby. It's just Ruby going on here. And now I'm just going to go back to Rails and say, hey, Rails, instead of rendering JSON user, let's just render JSON user JSON. Okay, and let's see what happens. If that worked. Okay, interesting. So something has happened. For one thing, I don't see the password anymore. Another thing I see now, data, ID, type, attributes, username, name, hometown, and all this stuff. Now, some people might look at this and say, this is ludicrous. Why would you want all this extra stuff? Now you have more things than you used to have. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, notice that we're getting the entire hometown, including all of its stuff. So if we look carefully, as far as the user goes, I got an ID, user, username, and name. That's exactly what I was looking for. These are the attributes. Users is a type, right? That was kind of, I didn't ask for that, but it came. And I got my ID. And without getting too far into it, when it comes to serializing data, the way that we reference and index our return values, like, this is not a bad pattern to have, where I always have a top level key of data, where I always list which things within this thing are attributes. And notice that the relationship happens to be, I should say, the hometown is listed as an attribute, right? As opposed to, like, if this was active model serializer, you might have seen something like, never mind with hometown, because we belong to a hometown, right? So I could say belongs to hometown. I save that. I refresh this page. Now it's listed as a relationship. And that's actually not a bad thing at all. Like, data, attributes, relationships, like, these things are broken up. And so some people might like this, some people might not like this. Is there a way to change it? I bet there is. And I have some options here that I could look into as far as attributes go. Things per object, et cetera, et cetera. We've got some stuff about relationships. I'm just kind of scrolling through here, reading through, see what all it says. Yeah. So I kind of like what I have here. Like I think this is pretty good. Like I don't mind. I kind of like having the extra keys. I think this is gonna normalize the responses I get. And I've only sort of glanced through here, and I honestly don't know off the top of my head. I'm sure there's probably a way that I can adjust the if I just wanted to see the user without saying data and without saying attributes and things like that. But I'm okay with this. I like this a lot. So let's keep it as this for now. And let's look at, what do I have two of? I have two locations, but do I have anything in my locations controller? No, I don't. So that's okay. We'll leave that alone for now. Cool, so I have a serializer set up, which means that I need to create serializers kind of for the rest of these things. And I'm kind of inclined at this point to hold off on building my serializers and build them one by one. Once on my React side, I know what I want. I don't see the point of building all my serializers, and that goes for my controller actions as well, until I have a need from the front end of this is where I want to send, this is where I want to get information from. I want to get these things or get that thing, or I want to change this thing or update that. Like I haven't made those decisions yet. So there is kind of this balance of how much of a backend do I build before I think about the need that I have. And a given project, you might know more about what the users need, what the user needs or an application needs than some other project. If you're building just an API and you're going to allow other people to access it, right? Then you might know exactly what you're going to expose for each model, and you just know that because your company or whoever you're working for or yourself, you know the things that you want to allow people to see and the things you don't want to allow them to see. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to pause on adding any more serializers or adjusting my controller actions and move forward. And then once I have a need to hit my backend, I can make those adjustments as I go. Now that I have my serializers set up, I have a gem that will serialize for me. I have my controllers set up. Some of them are set up more than others. And that's totally fine. Like I know how to update those things then as I go. Does anybody have any questions about that decision that I'm making or questions about anything so far? Everybody feeling okay? Everybody still here?
Oh, good.
Cool, awesome. Don't hesitate to ask questions, please, if you have them, of course. But I think we can move forward. And this is exciting because I think, let's check our devlog because it's, I write things down. I tend to be forgetful sometimes, not always. Maybe always if you ask my wife. Just kidding, she wouldn't say that. She might. Devlog. There. Let's see. Thank you. That's a really good idea. And instead of killing my server, I'm going to let it run. And let's see. Git status. Let's see. Git add gem file. Git add gem file.lock. Git add app serializers. Git commit. Add fast JSON API gem for serializing. Git status. What did I change in these? Git add DB seeds. Git commit add seeds. What did I do in all those? Oh, git add. We'll just add the rest and say git commit. Actually, that's not what I should have done. Oh well, this is two things in one. We updated user controller show with serializer, and we adjusted relationships for attraction and user. This is a terrible commit, way too long. It should be like 3 different commits. So with committing, do as I say, not as I do. Let's see. So I added some seed data. I double checked it. I added serialization, mock user lock-in. Oh yeah. So I was going to say something like for controllers, application controller. For now, I'm going to say current user def. Let's see. Do I still want helpers do? I think so. And I'll say def current user, which is just for now going to be hard-coded as user.first. Okay. This is obviously not, this is currently a mocked version of logged in, or being logged in or something. Being logged in. Awesome. In fact, I could even add like a def logged in, because I know I'm going to want to do something like this down the road. This is probably as far as I'll go, and I'll just say not current user. And that'll give me a Boolean rather than the current user itself. Cool. That looks good for now. What else did I say in my, oops, I keep switching screens. That's not what I want to do. So mock our user login. Oh man, here we are. We're at create React app. Okay, excitement. Okay, so let's see. We don't want to do it on our backend. I want to do it in its own file. So right now, for the record, I'm in this sort of master folder I created, which is not a Git repository. And globetrotter backend, that's my Rails app. I'm now going to first check my node version. And for some reason, that's my default. That's not what I want. Use stable. Nope, not node, use NVM. Use stable. Create React app globetrotter front end. You can say front end. I'll just say client. And that's going to take a moment. And that's exciting.
Sorry,
Hey, Bob.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
At what point do you share your API, and how do you share your API from Rails to React?
What do you mean at what point do you share it exactly?
So what setup, or have you, maybe you've done this already and I missed it, but what setup do we need to do on the Rails side?
Ah, yes.
Okay.
Great question. So let's do that while React is loading. So the question is like, what further configurations do we need to make to our backend so that it will talk, right? We want to allow this thing to talk to our React app. So let's first check our gem file. What I'm looking for is to make sure that rack cores is commented in, and it is. That's a good first step. From there, I'm going to look in config, initializers, and find cores. And this chunk of code needs to be commented back in. And what it's going to say is basically the fact that it's commented out, the fact that I don't have this, I'm not saying this, is I'm basically saying I will only send responses to my own self, to my own server, right? I'm only going to handle server requests by myself to myself. In other words, if I have a bunch of JavaScript and the JavaScript is sending AJAX requests, we're all good, right? If I'm running that inside of the Rails app that's actually up and running. Otherwise, I'm going to get the following error. And even though this has started, let me just sneak back over to Rails for just a moment. Oh, it's already running. That's even better. So if I even, let's see, what about right here? If I say fetch, oops, fetch, there it is. Localhost 3000. Actually, I have to put the full address in. http://localhost 3000 /API/v1/users/1. Okay, we know that's Nadia. We've seen it. So then I'll say .then. I need to take that response and call .json. So now that that's readable, I'm going to console log the response. Okay, and what do I get? A 404 not found, exception, undefined method helpers. Oh, well, that's not the error that I was expecting. Am I thinking of, what am I thinking of? Sinatra with helpers do? Is this a Sinatra thing that's not in Rails, and I'm totally like mixing and matching my my Ruby libraries here? Let's see. Oh, I know. Do I want it to be private? No. We'll leave it. We'll leave it like this for now. We'll readjust that later. That's not the error I wanted. So let's see a different error. Okay, it's not an error. It doesn't seem to be. Data, Nadia, blah blah blah, relationships, etc. Okay, why did that work? Let's see. What if I do this? I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go over here and try and do the same thing. There's the exact same code, and now I get all this red coming up. And the reason is I sent this request from the browser that was sitting at my current Rails application, right? And it was like, yeah, that's cool, no problem. Here's your information. When I went somewhere else, it doesn't matter where. Here's on GitHub. I could go to about blank, right? I could try and do the same thing. I could try and submit a fetch request from here. And again, no, not allowed. So what's happening here? This is a CORS issue, right? Cross-origin resource sharing. Is that right? I always get one of those words wrong. Basically, it's saying no. You're not allowed. Rails is not allowing that kind of thing. So what I need to do is I need to go back to my CORS file in my config initializers, which is right here. I need to comment this code in. What we're doing is we're saying here are the requests we're going to authorize. And you can whitelist them. So the deal is like if you know exactly who you're going to allow requests from, then you whitelist them here, right? If you don't know, like if you're an open API that could accept requests from anyone, then you could do this. And this is what we're going to do for now. It may not be recommended to keep it this way, but for now I'm going to say origin star. I could also say right now origins http ://localhost 3000, because this is actually where I'm going to be running my React app, and I'll be running Rails on 3001. And this would work as well. For now, I'm going to leave it as star, because why not? And then resource any, right? I can list the resources I'm going to allow, and then headers, and then methods. And I could be picky about what I'm going to allow. For now, I'm going to allow everything. Maybe not the configuration you would want in production. Depending on what kind of API you're running and serving, you definitely don't want people to be able to patch and put and delete like willy-nilly. But for now, I'm gonna leave that wide open. And now if I come back here and I rerun that code, it still refused to connect. Why did it refuse to connect? Oh, because this is a configuration, which means I need to go kill my Rails server, and I'll run it again. Because that's an initializer. So initializers run once, right? So initializer is just that. So now if I come back here, just for good measure, I'll clear out the console. And I'll try and run that code again. And I should see, still refuse to connect. Interesting. Would I have to include all the client routes? Do you mean all the server routes? So I think is the answer to your question, right? I can choose the resources that I'm going to allow through. Origins, though, is like, who is making this request? Any.
This is Babs again. Is it possible that you're running both on localhost 3000 and they're conflicting?
I don't have a React app running. I'm just making requests from wherever. I wonder what's going on here. Crap. I killed my server. I started it back up. This is running on localhost 3000. I adjusted my cores. I know I've got rack cores, the gem. That should do it. Let's see for fun. Well, since create React app finished. Oops, where are we here? There we are. I should be able to CD into it. This is client. If I run this, npm start. Let's open it up and see. So you hopefully are familiar with what React gives you with Create React App. It's, you get your little spinny React symbol and all that good stuff. it should give me an error or asking me if I want to run on a different port. Is 3000 busy? Whoops. And I'll just say yes. Port to 3001. Yes, of course. You can certainly change what port you. Yeah, Nadia is asking, can you change the default port? Absolutely. You can change it to anything you want. Well, not quite anything you want. There are some reserved port numbers, like some of the lower ones. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I know I can tell you 3001 is certainly fine. 3000, 5000, 8000, any of those should be fine. So just inside of source, we know that app, whoops, let's find app somewhere. First of all, let's make sure that we can get it running. Yes, I want to run a different port because I know that my Rails is running on 3000 for now. So let's pull this thing in. Can I pull this thing in here? I think I can. Yes, okay. So here's my React app that should be up and running. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in my component mount for my React app, once I find it, where did my React application go? There it is. Source, app. And right now it's functional. We'll change this to class. Notice that create React app is now, I don't know if it always started with function. I think it used to start with a class. But this will be class app, which means that I need this thing to be wrapped in a render. And I need all this up into there. And on a component did mount, we're going to fetch local host, if I could spell. Actually, I'll just copy it in because I know I have it already from here, right there. What I'm doing is I'm just seeing, like, is there a reason that I couldn't get it from the browser, but I will be able to get it from a JavaScript file that's living in a different server? I don't know. We'll find out. So here's what I'm going to do. And then, of course, I'm still console logging. And let's see what happens now. So now that I saved that, we should see that in the React app in the console. Class constructor cannot be class constructor app cannot be invoked without new. What? Of course. Thank you. Whoever, I see somebody wrote that for me. React.component. Okay. So now we're going to see if extents. Typing is ICANN has type. Okay. Now that we're rendering, our console is open, and we got our data. Interesting. So I guess they're not. Why would it be blocking from? That's interesting. I wasn't expecting it to block this. Oh, it's working now. Wait. Huh. Interesting. So something about GitHub. It didn't mind that I sent that from about blank, but it didn't like I sent it from GitHub. What about like google.com? Google.com. So interestingly, even with those stars, I'm getting rejections, even with what I thought was like a wide open, anyone can have access. I'm getting rejected. So Google's okay. It just doesn't like GitHub. It violates the following content security positive directory, self-upload, github.com, blah, 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 collector. Huh. Because it violates the document's content security policy. Interesting. I'm not going to spend any more time trying to look that up. I'm not sure whether this is coming from GitHub or from Rails. I don't know if anyone has seen this before. If you're knowledgeable about it, feel free to enlighten us. But it looks like for whatever reason I can't send it from when I'm on GitHub, but I have no problem from about blank or from google.com. So this is kind of what I was expecting, is that now it's allowed, right? Because I've allowed it from whatever domain. So apparently there is an exception there, and I don't know if it's actually being blocked from the client side here from Rails. But anyway, that's not a big deal because you're never going to need to open up a new website and drop in the console and make your fetch requests. They're going to be coming from your React server, and that's where I just fired that last one from, and we had success, which was demonstrated right here. There it is. There's our data, our attributes, our relationships. This is looking good. So, cool. So yes, you can change the ports. Would you have to include client routes? I think client routes for the origin. What, Alex? I'm not sure. Or AJ? Sorry, Alex. No, Alex, right? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that question. If you were using React router, would you need all the client routes for the origin, like localhost 3000 users? Can you explain your question a little more? Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying if I'm using React router and one of my routes, for example, is /users, do I need to include that in origins? In other words, would that need to be whitelisted? How explicit is it? And I believe the answer is no. I believe the answer is the domain itself is enough. Not 100% sure on that, but I believe that that is true. So basically, in other words, if you said users, so let's just, I mean, can we demonstrate that? We have to do a little bit more work than, what's that going to do for us? So, okay, so now that's where we are, right? Our current path, right? If I say window dot what location dot href, there it is. Okay, so that's where we are. So we should be able to answer your question by doing. So I'm going to go back to course and I'm going to whitelist localhost http ://localhost 3000. I'm going to reverse these ports, by the way. Well, no, I'll say 3001. So right now React is running on 3001. I'm not declaring. In other words, you're asking, do I need to do this? And like anywhere else we'd be making requests from. And I believe the answer is no, as long as we have the correct domain. Let's try it. So right now I'm only whitelisting the domain, localhost 3001. That's where React is running. So that means I need to go back to first my Rails server and kill it and restart it. So kill Rails S. And so I'm going to go back and then I'll make a change. Once that's up and running, I'll wait for that to see that it's running. Once that's running, I will make a request from, or I'll save something in my React app, which will cause a rerun. No, I don't want to re-render, do I? Well, I'll just do it from right here, which I think I still have copied, yep. And we got our data. And if I go somewhere else, so anywhere else besides localhost 3001, for example, if I go to Google now and try and do the same thing, now we get a course issue, right? Does that answer the question? So trial by doing. So as long as you provide the domain, it doesn't matter what whatever sort of nested routes you're in within that domain. So the domain that it's looking for. I don't know if you can. Maybe you can actually go so far as to whitelist like which individual routes if you are specific. I really don't know the answer, and honestly, like right now, I'm not going to play around with that. We're gonna push it along. But that's a great question, and you can play with that as much as you want. Okay, so we're to a point right now where I think our next step now is to start thinking in Redux, right? We have React.
Howard, before you do that, don't you want to commit? And
yeah, I definitely do. Oh, thank you. So let's see, git status on our back end. So git app controllers, application controller, and I added mock helpers for current user, and logged in. Okay, git add config, initializers, cores, git commit that I allow access from other domains. Okay. Cool. And let's jump over to React and run an initial commit here. And of course, it's like, what are you talking about? So let's run a git init. And we've initialized an empty Git repository here. That's perfect. Let's go create this thing. So GitHub github.com, me, repositories, and I will create a new one, maybe. There it is. Globetrotter, Globetrotter front end. Call the last one back end, so I'll call this one front end. And in the meantime, now that I've initialized this thing, I will git add dot git commit initial commit, which is this scaffold React app. There we go. So those are all committed and just waiting for an origin or a remote. So we can just copy paste because why spend the time in typing? And there we go. And there we go. So now we're up and running as well. So Globetrotter backend and Globetrotter front end, those are going to be the two repos that we can find our code in. Yes, there is, of course, a componented mount that I added to, of course, not to this one, but to, I don't like that these are not side by side. Oh, it's on desktop, I wonder, okay. Let's make that big. Let's see, I think I want, there we go. I want Chrome app. There we go, yeah, that's what I want, okay. So let's get rid of that actually, because I definitely don't want that right now. Because we're gonna think in Redux from the get-go. And that's what that's how we're gonna get this thing going. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and add that as well. Git status, git add source app.js, git commit, remove component did mount. Good enough. Okay, so I think where we are now is we're gonna think in React, but we're also going to think in Redux from the start, right? We're not going to build things in React and translate to Redux. It's a lot of work. So we're going to start with React and Redux. So the two things that are on my mind right now, or should be on our mind right now, is what in the world do we want this thing to look like? What do we want it? We kind of know what we want it to do, but we haven't thought about our layout yet. What we should be seeing, and there's a couple of thoughts around that. We have options. We could build components one at a time and kind of just show them all, kind of lay each component out wherever we want. And then like once we have the functionality within each component, we can move them around and add CSS in if we want to. The other thing we can do is try and add that from the start and build things to look the way we want from the get-go. We have to think about when we want to add routes. Should we start with routes, or do we want to wait and add routes in later as well, right? You could build all your components out, have them all visible on one page, and then add routes and then specify what route means what. I don't know if there's a best practice for all that. I think as developers, you'll find a way that makes sense to you. But I know that changes to state and the state that we want to see, we're going to start with Redux as well. So to me, like, I want to think about the components and like at least like some main container components and think about the Redux store. We're 90 minutes in right now. Is there anyone who would like to stick around for like 10 minutes and we can get the Redux store at least up and running? You know, at least a basic version. Of course, it's not going to have everything in it. You know, if everyone needs to split, then we'll call it.
I'm good.
We've got a couple of folks that are saying yes. Okay, so we can get the Redux store open, I think, because it's just not a tremendous amount of work to at least get it started. Of course, just to be clear, like this is going to be a basic version of the store with like one reducer, and then of course we will start adding reducers as we need more and more stuff. Let's think about this. Okay, so I have my app. First of all, let's just look and see what create React app gives us. Of course, we've got our index.html. You're probably not going to you may or may not touch this. Of course, we're going to change our title to Globetrotter app, or just Globetrotter or whatever. Maybe just Globetrotter is a little cleaner. I don't care about this icon. We're not going to be using a spinny React icon anymore, so we can get rid of that. which means that we can get rid of the logo. In fact, we can get rid of virtually everything, literally everything here, except for maybe like a string that says, hello, I'm React. Okay, so we'll trim that down. And an index.html, we don't care about the logo. I'm okay with the theme color for now, I guess. We'll probably change that. I think that's good enough for now on index.html. Let's see what this looks like now. Should just say hello from I'm React. Perfect. App.css. Obviously, we don't need animation for our logo. Unless we want, like, we could kind of steal a different picture, like maybe of the globe spinning. Like, that might be cool. I don't know. So maybe I'll leave the CSS in there now. Maybe we'll think about totally stealing from that from React and adding like the picture of the Earth or something like that. I don't know. So I'll leave that alone for now. App.js, it looks okay. Here we have sort of the scaffolding for some tests, which is really nice that this comes baked in now. We can think about that down the road. Index.css, we don't need to touch. And index.js is where we need to start. And we have options here. I'm going to start, I think, by adding Redux here in index.js. And then once we have our store set up here, I'm probably going to start pulling things into other files for cleanliness and organization. But to get things started and to see everything in one place, I'm okay with doing it all right here. So the first thing we need, like, to get our Redux up and running, what's the first thing I need to do?
Import
Yeah, I think a bunch of people are trying to say it at once. Import Redux, right? What does it look like? How do I import Redux? What do I need to import? From what? Was it store? Create store? Like this?
Yes.
Do you need to install it or install the gem first?
So I don't need it. So I think you mean package, right?
Yeah, sorry.
And that's okay. That's all right. So gem, Ruby land, package, JavaScript land, but the same idea, 100%. I knew exactly what you meant. And I don't know, right? And so we'll have to find out. We'll see what happens. React will yell at us. In fact, it'll yell at us right now if it doesn't know what Redux is. And it looks like it's still okay. So it appears that we have Redux actually all set for now. But that's a great question. And if I didn't, then I would need to. It just happens that I have it installed or up and running. So create store is definitely not the only thing I need here. What else do I need?
Provider.
Provider. Does provider come from Redux?
React Redux.
Yes, there you go. React Redux, okay. This is definitely a good start.
Do you want to throw apply middleware in there?
I do, apply middleware. And people are already saying they know I need thunk, import. Is thunk the default? Is it a default export? No, I think it's a named export, right? I don't remember. We'll find out. Thunk from Redux thunk. Okay. I also know that I'm going to need create store, apply middleware. I believe, does compose come from Redux? It does, right? Yes, we'll definitely be, you're exactly right. We definitely want our dev tools. So, is that everything I need for now? As far as importing things, let's find out. So I know I need to create a store, something, and that store is going. I'm going to wrap app in provider, okay, like so, and I need to pass it what prop must be provided to provider.
Store.
Exactly. Store must be provided. And further, store must be created using create store. What does create store take as an argument or as arguments? Anyone? A reducer, okay, which I don't have yet. Okay. What else?
The Redux dev tool method.
So yeah, so basically what I need to do is something like, I feel like I'm missing something here. Is it something? No, I'm not. So I need to do something like const compose. I think they call it typically, or whatever I've seen, compose enhancer or something like that. Equals, and this is the line of code I don't have memorized. Something, 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 or compose, something along these lines. I'm going to look this up because I don't remember it. If you do, if you remember it, you can tell me. If you can get it pasted in before I can find it. You're using compose, let's see, several enhancers, something like this. Enhancers not supported. I just remember like the error. We'll see if I can, we'll see if that picks it out. Yeah, it does. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Google's amazing sometimes. Sometimes it does exactly what I need. Oh my gosh, you guys are great. So here it is. You beat Google, or you beat me and Google, or whatever. There it is. So this is the code we need. I believe that's it. So this returns a function that we then use here, compose enhancer, and we pass in compose. See, we pass in apply middleware, which needs thunk as an argument. If I had more middleware, I could create. I could do something like this. If I knew that I wanted more middleware, I could do something like const middleware equals like an array with thunk, and I could pass that instead. But like I don't right now. I just have thunk, and let's see. Is there any chance that this is all we need? Let's find out. Okay, reducer is not defined. Right, of course, we don't have a reducer yet. So for the time being, I could just do something like this: const reducer equals. Now, I'm going to do it this way first, I think. So I'm going to say combine reducers, because I know I'm going to need multiple reducers. There's no question. So I'm going to say reducer equals combine reducer, and combine reducers just takes. Does it just take a list, or does it take an object? I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it takes an object, right? So we'll just say const user reducer equals a function that returns, we can just do this, empty array. And I'll just say users, actually. Users. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm totally cheating the system, and this is a garbage reducer, which I might get an error for. We'll see in just a minute. But it's at least to get Redux kind of like standing up on its feet. And I'm using combine reducers. I'm passing in an object, and I'm just using the shorthand. This is the same as saying users, right? But I'm just using the shorthand syntax. And now I have a reducer, which I can use to pass here. And let's just see what in the world's going on. Okay, can't resolve Redux thunk. Okay, there we go. So there's my first, as somebody alluded to, Redux thunk. Did this thing, I hope this thing didn't update my node version. NVM node v. Dang it, that's gonna cause a problem, isn't it? Why does it do that? I gotta change my default. So I might get an issue here. I might not. It might work fine. So we're getting Redux thunk up and running. That's what it couldn't find. So hopefully that doesn't take too long. I should have used yarn instead of npm. Yarn is much faster. I don't know why I chose npm. Oh well. So we're gonna let that get running. It's gonna take a second. So what I was gonna mention was like, I don't like having all this here. Like I'm putting it here just kind of like to put all the ingredients in front of us. So if you're watching this, like if you're trying to learn like how in the world do I do this, these are the ingredients we need. We need a store. We need a reducer or reducers. There's some animal outside my window right now. It's making noise and it's distracting me, sorry. I need my store, I need my, which I pass in my reducer, usually using combined reducers, right? Rarely we're only gonna have one reducer. And my middleware, which this is kind of a newer If you're coming from the curriculum, you might have seen an older version of how we do this. This is kind of a newer version of how we have to build, put our middleware together. The older version might have looked something like this, or a different, I should say, I guess you'd say the older version, right? You might have said something like, here's this, something that looks something similar to this thing would have gone here, and then you wouldn't have needed anything other than apply middleware thunk, right? Some of you may have seen this syntax might look more familiar to you. That's okay, just two different syntaxes for doing the same thing. And this is probably the way you're gonna need to go if you're using, if you're building everything from scratch now. So it's just a minor change in the syntax of what Redux needs. So I need, and that's really all I need. And then I can wrap provider around app and pass it a prop of store, passing in the store that I used, create store to create. And that's like getting Redux set up. It's really not that much to get it set up. Oh boy, what happened? What in the world? Now what's it saying? Attempted, thunk is not exported from Redux thunk. Oh, okay, so it's not a named export. So it's a default export, right? Beautiful. Okay, now we should hopefully see Redux with a initial store of users as an empty array. Beautiful. Okay, so we have this thing like now it's like ready to go. It's raring to go. Any questions about this, about what I just did? Is anybody scratching their head like what is going on right now?
Hi, this is Babs. I'm kind of scratching my head because I've sort of experimented with this in the past, and I feel like I'm installing Redux, and then I'm installing Redux Thunk, and then I'm installing React Redux. Did you do all three of those and I missed it?
I have done them recently enough that the current command line is like, yeah, I know what that is. I can grab that.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I have an overactive imagination. So.
If I cleared out my versions of Node and like emptied out everything on my computer and like kind of reset everything, then yes, of course I'd have to install create React app right from the start. Right? Okay,
gotcha.
Yeah. It's kind of like a gem. Is it installed globally? Is it not? Is it available globally? Is it not? Once you install it, you know, sometimes you can get away with not having to do it again somewhere. Cool. So let's see, because notice that we have this massive thing, node modules, which I'm not even going to try and like, I can't even open, but it's pretty big. And you know what, I shouldn't have even said that because I don't want to try a conversation around that right now. I'm just going to, what I will say, jumping back to the code, is let's like change things around because this is not the way we want it. We definitely want a folder for our reducers. We definitely want a folder for our actions. And now, whoa, not that. What is this? Nope, not that. Delete that. Move to trash. A folder, I said. I said folder, I must have clicked on file. For our actions. Wait, what just happened? Did I not click on folder? Can I create a new file? What?
This folder, I think it's just the icon that's messed up.
That's so weird. Users.js. I don't like that. It's bothering me. Apparently it's there. Why would I do that? It's so strange. So I'm going to also call users.js. So I'm calling them the same thing because like the actions are on users, the reducers are on users, right? So what I'm going to do is a couple things. I'm going to take my reducer out of here first of all. This is no good. And that's to do. I'm going to take this thing out of here. So this was my reducer, right, that I mocked up. And just to be clear, it's just a function, right? So I'm going to get it out of here and put it in my users.js functions. And I can split this to the right so we can see it as we go. So I'm just going to show you. I'm rearranging now for organization's sake, right? Because this is terrible to have. Not terrible, but I just don't like having everything here like this. So I'm going to paste this over here. I no longer need to name this thing here because I'm going to export it. So I'm going to export an arrow function. And of course, now that this is actually going to be a reducer, it's going to take an state and what?
Action.
Export default state and an action, that's right. And the state needs to be what kind of an argument? Will this work?
An object.
Not exactly an object.
Equal to your object.
So my action is going to be an object. But state, when I say what kind of an argument, what I'm really implying is like, do I need to give it a default?
Yeah, you need a default.
It needs to be a default. And the default should be an empty version of whatever this particular reducer is responsible for returning. If this is my user's reducer, what will it return in terms of data types or data structures?
An object.
It's going to return an array, which is why I had it returning an array before. Like it's going to be an array of users. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it'll be an array with objects in it.
Yes, exactly. And like, I don't need to like mock objects or anything. I can just, an empty array is good enough. And when will this initial, I just gave away the answer. When will this default argument use the default? At what point in time?
When you initiate.
Yes, when add init. Remember, if we go back and look, this initial action that got fired, when that thing gets fired, it's going to return the default states of all of your reducers. Okay? So if I only had one, but to be clear, because I think the answer came a couple times, if I only had one reducer, it does need to be an object. But I'm taking each reducer, and each reducer is going to represent one piece of the state, one piece of the React global state. When I use combined reducers, notice that I'm passing an object, and each key value pair, each property is going to point to one reducer, right? And in this case, like, where is this going to come from? Which of course I'm still going to use the shorthand, but it's the same thing as this. Where is this going to come from? Now I need to import it. And what I can do, because this is a default export, I can choose to name it whatever I want, and I'm going to do that. Call it users, right? Because that's what it is. I could call it users reducer if I wanted to, right? If this, maybe this, is this helpful if I do it that way? Users reducer. Is that helpful to like understand what's happening? And then where I'm going to export it from is from, where are we here? We're inside of index.js, so I need to go, we're on the same level as the actions folder, /actions, and then the file is users.js. Okay, so because this is a default export, I can name it whatever I want, and maybe this is more clear. I'm going to name it users reducer, from this thing, and then when I pass this object, I'm going to declare a key of user. That's what will show up in my store, and point it to my users reducer, this function right here that I'm exporting. And now, sorry about that. So now what I'm going to do is open up a case statement, and I'm going to, a switch statement. This is JavaScript. I'm going to switch on what?
Type of action.
Type in action.
Exactly, action.type. And the whole switch needs to be in brackets. And now I say case of, actually we'll just start with the default. No, we need to start with the default because we don't have any actions yet. So my default is going to be return state. And at the very least, and I should indent that, there we go. At the very least now, hopefully, if we didn't break anything, this should work.
Howard, is the folder you're supposed to import the reducers from reducers, not actions, on line 9?
Thank you. It sure is.
I had the same question.
It sure is. Why didn't that error out? What was going on there? I don't know. That's really interesting that didn't error out. This must have been undefined. So actually this would have just been, let's actually look at that for a second. Let's have a peek because, well, action's not going to exist. Hang on. Actions, there we go. Let's see what actually showed up because we probably just didn't notice. I tried to import something that from a file that exports nothing, right? This is the file that's completely empty that I'm actually pointing at right now. Thank you for pointing that out, by the way. Let's look and see. If we look at the state, there is no state. And that's because there is nothing here. User reducer is undefined. If I have a property in my reducer that's returning undefined, Redux is like, nah, you don't need to know about that. Okay? So let's actually point to the right thing. Reducers, save that. And now, if we didn't break everything or if we built things somewhat correctly, we should see now an empty array for users, and that's perfect. Okay, that's exactly what we wanted. So to be clear, I could name this thing if I wanted to, but what I like to do personally, I like to have a file for each reducer and just export default that reducer. If I needed to, if I had a more complex state, I might say something like const initial state, and then like describe, you know, basically like it might be an object with a key of whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And then I would just say state equals initial state. But however, since I only have an empty array, that's what this thing's going to be an array, then I just need to start with an empty array. That's fine. So in other words, you can be more specific with your initial state depending on what that state is. If it's an object, you can be more specific. So because it's an export default, I can name it whatever I want. And if I'm naming it whatever I want, I could call it users reducer. By the way, I could do this as well. But now I'm going to see something weird in my state. The name of the piece of state, like the name of the property, is actually going to be called user reducer, and that doesn't sound right, right? It should be users, not user reducer. So that's why I think I'll keep it this way, knowing that I like the cleaner syntax of just saying calling this thing users. I can call it whatever I want because it's a default export, and then using the shorthand syntax. That's what I had. But if this is helpful for people to read, then I'll leave it this way. Okay. Cool. Any questions about that? How we ended up now with an initial state of an empty array? My Redux store is up and running. It's waiting. Now, I'll have to tell you that I actually prefer to create a new file called store, and I prefer to build my store here. So I'll split this down so we can still see what I'm about to do, not be all tricky and sneaky. So now I need all this here, and then I need this here, and I need all this stuff here, and let's see. And then down at the bottom here, I can just export default store. Again, I could do it this way. And now I just need to import store from that file. And now this is a default, so I can say store from /store.js. And that just cleans up index.js. And now my store lives in its own world. And I like that better. To me, that feels nicer. And let's see if we broke anything. We did. Thunk is not defined. That's because thunk can come out of here too. Cleans up even more. So we'll grab thunk, save that. And now we're back to having the store that we want. So I really like that a lot. I feel like that pattern is nicer. So I really like breaking things apart and putting them in their own files. I know that can be confusing. And by the way, I could export store, right? And then I could, instead of exporting default, so let's just watch what happens if I do that, first of all. What's this? Oh, I saved it. I didn't save it? Save. Okay. So let's watch what happens. Failed to compile. Parsing error, unexpected token, export. What's can I not? What am I missing there? Wait, I'm looking at the same file twice. What is? I think I just actually think I need it here, don't I? Like that. There we go. So now I'm just exporting this const, right? Apparently I can't, I didn't realize I couldn't do that, but I can. But I can, sorry, I didn't realize I couldn't break it apart, name it, and then export it. But what I can do here is export const store, right? This is what's still coming out of here. But now I'm saying on line 6, I'm saying, give me the default, whatever it is from this thing. And this file is saying, I don't have a default. What are you talking about? So now I would need to do it this way, right? That's just kind of a quick comparison of the difference, and now we're happy. Okay, So this is grabbing a named export as opposed to the default. There's of course nothing else that needs to be exported from this file, so I'm going to go back to the way I had it. I just wanted to quick show that because I know that sometimes that's a point of confusion. Default, there we go. Cool. And we're still happy. All right, we have come to the end of this particular series, and I think we did pretty well, personally anyway. I hope you all feel the same way. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's okay. We will continue pushing on next week, where we will start adding some authentication, authorization, all that kind of good stuff. So let's see how far we got. We did. So let's see, I'll say done, 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 mock user login, yeah, done. And we didn't get to sending an initial fetch request, but we'll do that next time too. We did that, done. We did that. Okay, we did, and this is kind of like where we are now. Cool, this is perfect. All right, folks, any questions as we close? We say sayonara.
Howard, do you know when you're going to do your next session on this?
Yeah, it's Tuesday at 11 a.m., 10:30. Hang on a second, I'll tell you. Tuesday at, today, next week, Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern.
Thank you.
No, sorry. Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern is an auth lecture. 6:30 that evening, we will pick up here. That way we will be armed with knowing how to do auth, right, using JSON Web Tokens. Okay, so 6:30 is going to be the actual next live build. During the auth session, the auth lecture, and I can stop recording this, of course. So I'm going to stop recording, stop share. Stop recording. Sorry, let me just, no sense in having this here.